Welcome to my fourth game in the Intermezzo Championship Season 12. This game is against Goldan and Skaiwalker. This is the first game that was finished in the second half of games released. Um, Before this game, I'm winning the group, then Goldan is second, Skaiwalker is third with 15, 10, and 6 points respectively. Although it seems like there's kind of a large gap, there's still plenty of games to be played, and it's not really set on who's advancing and who's relegating yet. So looking over the leaders and wonders, you can see that pyramids and library are on the card row. A couple of the leaders, but still plenty to drop as well. Looking from the back, there's Spaceflight and Hollywood as big point wonder getters, or big point wonders basically. And with Spaceflight, there's support from Jobs and Einstein, and somewhat Meyer in the sense if you get computers. And then for the Hollywood, there's Chaplin and Marlene. Leading into the culture leaders, there's Shakespeare and Gaudi. Leading into the science leaders, there's Newton and Nobel. So pretty clear paths in order to go for one strategy or the other. Also something to note is that there's Watt into Marie, along with the railroad. So you can definitely get a huge resource production and then kind of stabilize your science with Marie if you get her pretty early. Additionally, in the H3 wonders, there's Manhattan, which also kind of supports spaceflight as well, since they go with the same strategy. And then there is, I always think of Empire State as not a great wonder unless there's gates in the game, which there isn't. Fast food chain is always a mediocre point getter. Looking at the H2 wonders, every single one of them besides Eiffel Tower is an economical wonder. So they're all pretty strong in their own regard. There is some colony support with Suez, Cook, and Maria, but there isn't actually much colonization in the Age 1 leaders. There's no Isabella, there's no Eleanor, there's no Barbarossa. Going from the Age 1 leaders, though, there is some strength matters. You know, there's Joan, there's Zizka, there's Saladin, there's Nostradamus. You also have Leo to lead into the science leaders, and Columbus to kind of help start the colonization. But he is not as good of a colonizer in general, since all he does is give you the one territory. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's just get on to the game. Goldan takes library first, which I think is the right pick. There's much easier chances of getting a leader to fall down than a better wonder, just because there's more leaders than wonders in the game. And it seems right to not allow Skywalker to pick up a leader and a wonder in his first pick. Skywalker goes for Confucius Richland, which I think is correct. And then I go for Engineering Genius and Aristotle. I could have picked pyramids here. I decided that I wanted the leaders fine to pick up. Engineering Genius is a perfectly fine card, so I thought this was slightly better. I didn't really want Goldan to get Engineering Genius on one, so I decided to pick it up here. But it's debatable, since I think that Aristotle is somewhat of a high variance leader, and pyramids is probably one of the better wonders in general. So Goldan here, he starts by building normal things, but then he takes he takes urban growth and frugality. I don't really agree with this. I wish that he would just pick up Hammurabi here. I think that using any actions to pick up Age A cards, unless you just have like one left over. Basically, I would try to find a way to not pick up Age A yellow cards, since they provide such a little benefit for the amount of civil actions you're investing in them. So if you could have just done Hammurabi, elect, and then do the normal stuff. Skywalker elects, goes for pyramids, and then does the rest of normal stuff. And then right here I have the decision of which wonder to go for. Whether Stonehenge or Silk Road, Great Wall I would never consider as my first wonder. It's not an economical one, even though it is a great wonder. I just decide that I would prefer something that has more economy focus. I think I go for Silk Road here, and my reasoning is that it's just a slightly better wonder than Stonehenge. It only costs one more step and one more resource, but it provides an actual benefit, an actual tangible income, and has some extra resources that you can get from yellow cards with the extra ability. And the matter of fact is that they're both on one civil action, or sorry, they're both on two civil actions. If Stonehenge was on one CA, I would consider it a little bit more, but I think that the marginal extra cost of Silk Road is worth the actual benefits from it. It is just a little bit more debatable. If Stonehenge were on one CA, then I could actually select my leader or use Engineering Genius to start it, one or the other. Along goes for Cleo, so definitely has a lot of use from her extra bonus. Skywalker Seeds, flips Development of Civil Life, use it for normal stuff, and then takes 2 yellow cards. I kind of don't think that taking Urban Growth 1 for 2 civil actions is worth too much. In my opinion, I'd probably take the Warfare, just because I think that you want a place to use science. Being in this position where you have pyramids and warfare for the 5 civil actions, 3 military actions, means that you don't really need to pick up Joan or Zhishka in order to get a military action. But that's just me. I think that sciences or blue techs are pretty good to get when you have Confucius. There's also the option of going for printing press instead of going for the philosophy, especially because there is a Shakespeare in the game. So I think that's probably the option that I would have taken. It is a little bit on the, Shakespeare is a little bit on the greedy side in general, but he didn't build the lab yet at the time. He does use it for civil life, but he could have, I believe he could have increased population here instead with the civil life and then went for printing presses right away. Here, I go for Aristotle, and then I pick up 2 texts to start using his bonus. I personally like Warfare quite a bit. It's not, it's like, although there's more of these Warfare texts, strategy, 2 military theories, I still think the ability to get a 3rd military action, either in the end of H1 or the beginning of H2 is a pretty effective thing. Plus, I'm Aristotle, so I do want to get some extra science from the cards that I get. And then I decided to build 1 step of the Silk Road with my Engineering Genius, perhaps thinking about finishing it next turn, and then wanting to not get out of consumption, or wanting to not be in consumption already. This does run the risk of the development of warfare and the development of religion coming up, but you can't actually take the development of warfare if you don't have a way of increasing your population afterwards. If I increase pop, I wouldn't have enough food in order to actually use the warfare. So the only one that I'm really missing out is religion, and it's not that big of a deal. It's just a couple of resources. It would suck because I'm taking the theology as my happiness fixer for a while. So I'd miss out on a couple of resources, but it's not the worst to try and gather up some food for a turn or 2. On Seeds, it does flip development of religion, so I am punished, but it's not, like I said, it's not too bad. Then he takes irrigation, Jiska, and then builds 2 steps of library to get out of corruption, which seems great. Skywalker Seeds because it's Confucius, flips markets, finishes pyramids, takes Code of Laws. I don't believe he would have been able to finish pyramids if he did in the other order, so he's just waiting for Code of Laws for next turn. I decided to finish Silk Road. I could have done some stuff to get out of corruption with increasing population, but the fact that I could have increased population and then built like a religion or something or a theology. I decided that that's just too much of difficulty to try and like use Aristotle this turn. Let's just finish the Wonder, even though it takes a lot of civil actions, not take any cards. The only real card that I'm missing out on, I feel like, is Swordsman, and I'm okay to skip that for just a second, since there's 4 military texts in H1. So And plus I have the medieval army, so I'm looking for knights anyways. On C flips trade routes, grabs monarchy, switches to Zhishka, finishes library, and then builds a warrior and reveals his tactic. Uh, you know, it's definitely okay. I probably, in my position, seeing as he has a tactic already, doesn't really need to switch into Zhishka. This 4 strength isn't really threatening or anything. I know there's no wonder or anything for him to start right away, but there is alchemy on the row that he could potentially use Cleopatra for. If he looks at both Skywalker and my positions, we're not really looking to get that much stronger anyways. So I feel like he could be a little bit greedier with the resources and maybe think about going for alchemy for an extra turn. He does Elektrishka, gets 2 culture, and maybe he values that more than the one possible resource. But it's close. Maybe he's also thinking that Skywalker will grab Leo and alchemy, and he doesn't actually want. He's thinking that there's no point, so I might as well just start my extra culture production with Zhishka. Alright, Skywalker sees Confucius, flips development planning. The options are politics, agriculture, and warfare. He develops Code of Laws, grabs Swordsman, increases pop, builds a warrior, grabs Leo, grabs alchemy. So he does have a lot of civil actions, and Skywalker was able to do all of this. So Goldan was kind of right in the sense that he probably wouldn't be able to get this alchemy, but there is another one falling in the row, and it is very long for me, so maybe it's something that he could have considered doing still, but like I said, he's already gone for Zhishka, so no big deal. He already had the library too for extra science production, so yeah. I used Civil Life Civil Life was already used last time. So I took Development of Politics here. It was kind of weird. The reason I did that is because I was going to be in corruption anyways because I wanted this Code of Laws with Aristotle. So my other options were I couldn't take warfare since I didn't have population free. And sorry, I keep doing that. And I could have taken food. But if I wanted to take Code of Laws, there was basically no way that I could get out of corruption if I took food. So I basically just go with the Code of Laws play, and then increase pop a bunch of times and build a warrior in order to get out of corruption. You can see that, well, you can't see it anymore, but I just need the extra 2 resources did throw me off, so I needed to I just picked up Element of Politics since there's only one that I could really take that turn. I do stay the weakest, but that is a choice that I'm willing to make. There wasn't like a huge push to get stronger from Skywalker. He ceded half the cards, and Goldan ceded 2 of them, so I figured there wasn't going to be too much strength going on. But Goldan flips Reign of Terror, and that really sucks for me. I do have the free worker, but it is an unhappy one. So even though I can increase pop next turn, it's pretty difficult for me to get any stronger since I won't have any free population. Then Goldan takes Iron, upgraded it twice, and that's it. Has enough science to go for Monarchy next turn. Alright, Skywalker goes for Leo, goes for Alchemy, upgrades, and gets a little bit stronger. I can't really follow suit, unfortunately, so I'm just going to have to deal with being weaker for a bit. I'm going to take Saladin, take Iron, since it's on 1, go for Iron, 1 upgrade, increase pop. Or grab Taj Mahal, then increase pop. Definitely a lot of culture in my wonders already, but I'm going to have Iron. I should have pretty good production. I won't have the population to put them in buildings or anything, so I might as well use my resources to get some culture out of it, or some kind of benefit out of it, essentially. Yeah, and since I was going to stay the weakest anyways, I might as well really stay the weakest. Discard Knowledge of the Ancients. Draw these 2. Okay. Goldan flips New Deposits. Goes for Monarchy. Increases pop. Grabs Cultural Heritage. Seems reasonable. Upgrades as mine, takes Urban Growth. So instead of doing that, it's possible that he could have built. Um, Actually, not really. I was thinking about ways of getting the breakthrough out, but there really aren't too many ways to do it. So his turn seems completely fine in my opinion. Skywalker proceeds again, flips border conflict, so another strength event, unfortunately, and takes warfare, breakthrough, goes for some swordsman and cartography. Ends in corruption. He had a tough time getting out of it because he didn't have iron or a wonder to work on, so he just kind of eats the corruption here. I see it in Dark Ages. I basically have this idea that I'm going to be able to spend my science. I'm going to be spending a lot of my science almost every turn. So as long as I can play around it, the others have good science production. Want to kind of. I think that I can play around it if I know about it, and if the others try to save up science, then they're going to have some issues. So I decided to see it in Dark Ages here, even though I'm the weakest. I feel like the two strength events were Goldan, so kind of felt like this one was pretty safe. Plus, the fact that Confucius was the person who was seeding for a while meant there's probably a little bit extra science in the deck too. So I go for Warfare, get my 3 military actions, grab Revolutionary Idea, and Knights to eventually go for here. It's a little tough too, since I don't have any free population anywhere, but I do want to have the military tech just in case. Also, by taking this revolutionary idea, I have the 5 science. This will give me 5 science with Silk Road, so it's a pretty high possibility that I can switch into a government before Dark Ages hits. One goes for drama, printing press, so trying to set up for Shakespeare at this point. He's on the row. Takes knights, and then goes for drama here. Also hits corruption. It is really hard to get out of corruption when you have so much resource production and no like wonder to work on. He could have not taken so many cards, went for irrigation here, and then get it. And then it would be easier to get out of corruption in the future by starting to increase population and stuff. He wouldn't be able to do it next turn, so I see why he kind of went for this whole drama approach. Anyways, Skywalker plays Warfare, also gets his 3rd military action, goes for Nobel, which I think is a pretty reasonable upgrade to Leo. And goes for team sports here. He actually disbands a warrior in order to do it, and he's still having issues with his with corruption. The line that Skywalker takes makes it a little bit more difficult for me to defend, but I am Saladin. I can take the extra strength. I have a defense card, so I'm not too worried yet. Anyways, I go for the Republic, like I said. Finish Taj Mahal, upgrade once, and grab Patriotism. I was 1 action short from taking the Harvard. I would have really liked to be able to do that, but fortunately I couldn't. So yeah, I think the Patriotism is pretty good since I don't have a lot of military action. Unfortunately, my line does leave it so that Goldan can actually spend his resource bank. So take the strength because I need to be able to defend against Skywalker. Goldan flips, seeds and flips rats. Really sucks for me since I was waiting for that trickling of food. So I already lost the extra population from Reign of Terror, and I lost another population from rats. So not having the greatest start to this game. Goldan takes and finishes Harvard. It's all of his actions, so he does skip out on Shakespeare. But I'm assuming I do know that he does want to set up for Gaudi at this point instead. So it's not a big deal. There's not a huge difference between Shakespeare and Gaudi in terms of their actual culture gain. And he already has 3 different types of urban buildings. Could build the 4th. So he's pretty well set up for Gaudi as well. Actually has a huge culture production right now because of these 2 wonders and these 2 buildings here and 2 extra from Shiska. So starting to pull away from Skywalker for sure, but I also have 2 wonders that produce a ton of culture, so I'm not falling too far behind in that regard. Our general production is pretty much the same at the moment. I do have the same resource production. He has a lot more science, but I also have this huge civil action bank that I can kind of work with in order to catch up. Skywalker Seeds. Flips Good Harvest, so I can get another population out the turn after this one. Takes coal and just goes for it. Definitely will ease off on his. Definitely a good way to spend his resources at this point, and then just grabs a selective breeding. So here, I do see, I see civil unrest. Feel like I was going to go for the theology here. So it's pretty like neutral for me. I'm just trying to, gather some culture, I guess. I did kind of figure that there weren't too many strength events that were going to bother me anymore. I mean, I guess there's uncertain borders and stuff, but if I'm going to go for theology anyways, it's not a huge deal. And part of my turn is that I planned on taking the ocean liner so that I would have the actual yellow bank part wouldn't really hurt too much. And the reason I do go for the ocean liner here, first off, historic territory flips. I do bid the one. Everybody just bids as minimally as possible. And the big reason I do go for the ocean liner here is, and taking it all the way for here, even though I know that Goldan can't really take it for 4 civil actions. I mean, he could take it for 4 civil actions, and that was a big worry. I thought Skywalker would definitely take it for 4 civil actions. Doesn't need to go for the selective breeding, so I just felt like it would be too highly contested for me to just leave it on the row. Finish off by taking a couple extra resource, a little extra science, and knowing that I don't really need to go for any food upgrades anytime soon, I'd much rather pick up the urban growth and go for the theology later. I know that my civil unrest isn't until the next deck, so I have a little bit of time before that happens. And then since Skywalker, I play the medieval army just to kind of get out of hand, thinking that I could eventually go into knights if I wanted to. I wasn't using a tactic anyway, so my strength is the same. And then because Skywalker sent away a swordsman, I don't have to take strength anymore, so I decided to just take a civil action. I have 2 pretty good tactics actually already. Although I have no military techs developed, Napoleonic army is always a good one, and Hussars is great because I could just go for cavalrymen only with not a lot of science. Strategic flips, Skywalker wins it. So Long goes for Gowdy, and then builds a knight, reveals phalanx, so just a little bit stronger. Don't know if it was really necessary. He was already stronger than me anyway, so it wasn't really a big deal to get that much stronger. Then starts going up irrigations. I'm not exactly sure about irrigation in general. It's kind of slow at this point. Might be better to wait for the selective breeding. But he had it in hand already. He can use this to increase his population next turn, build a happy face thing. So definitely pretty reasonable. Alright, Skywalker proceeds, flips the Dark Ages that I had in there. So the other players did lose a little bit more than me, but not too much more. Skywalker takes cannons, starts Eiffel Tower, upgrades the mine, goes for cartography. Definitely expecting some colonies in the next deck. Takes the urban growth. Take Maria. Part of the reason that I wanted Ocean Liner was to actually synergize with some of the leaders, seeing as pretty much I couldn't take Cook or anything. The only other leader I could take was Newton. Figured that Maria with Ocean Liner would be a little bit better. You can use her extra resources and stuff too. So I really like her for, trickling extra science and definitely getting extra resources. I'm going to use her right away. And then copy Fighting Band here. I could have gone for a knight, but I decided that if I want to go for stuff, I want to go for age 2 text directly. Even though I could essentially the tech that I want the most is I want to get cavalrymen and just start building those basically. They're much better with the hussars that I have, much better than the knights, so I didn't want to waste the 5 science essentially. Plus having the age 2 techs will set me up better for age 3 tactics, so I was much happier with this. And then I did copy the tactics since I feel like I don't really need to draw anymore with good tactics in my hand, and I need to be able to still defend from 8. Drew the defense card anyway, so it didn't really matter. One takes journalism, destroys the lab, builds a library. I kind of think that this is weird, but it is like a very reasonable play because nobody is threatening any strength at all. He's just going for as much culture gain as possible. Um, my personal thought is that he really wants a happy face solution so that he can build another farm because what he really wants as Gaudi is more population to go into the urban buildings that he has. So yeah, I'm not really sure about basically spending 8 resources to get up 1 culture, or sorry, +3 culture, +1 science for this journalism, and actually having to spend the time on it at this turn. Basically, I think maybe you want organized religion, so that next turn you can increase pop, build another farm at some point, and yeah, basically it'd be easier to just get out more population with more food essentially. And um, my general thought is that in this game, there's everyone's always fighting for culture or strength or something, but the biggest thing that you need in order to enable both of those is population. And if you don't have enough, if you're not able to access your yellow bank, you're going to have some troubles trying to do both. So I really kind of believe that when you're on irrigation, you generally want 3 at some point, especially if you don't have any extra yellow tokens. And selective breeding is like the minimum that you want for your food production. But there are some exceptions. You could have some colonies. You could have Barbarossa, which makes using the food cost a little bit easier. And then there's obviously the ocean liner. But yeah. Anyways, he takes frugality, knows that his food is going to be his bottleneck. So definitely agree with that one. But he does pass organized religion, which I don't necessarily agree with. But it's possible that he's looking for pro sports eventually as his happiness solution, since it'll be the 5th type of building. Skywalker Seeds, flips historic territory. I win this one with an army and both my cards. I figured that I can rebuild them pretty cheaply since Ray has a bonus. And then Skywalker goes for another swordsman, and then take some cards to help with his production and Eiffel Tower. So here I had a decision. Well, you can see that I took the rifleman here. I had a decision whether or not I wanted to take the cavalrymen and go for those directly, or wait until they fall and go for them later. And then I was just basically making the decision if do I want to go for hussars here, or do I want to go for Napoleonic army. I don't have a lot of science, but I do get a little extra from Maria. I can pick up like a breakthrough if I want to as well. So I could have enough science in order to go for all 3 of those techs. Not really, basically with the idea that I'm not really planning on going for Air Force, but I'll set myself up for H3 tactics. Yeah, so I thought a good amount about it, and basically what I decided was I didn't want Goldan to have an easy way of getting strength because he doesn't have any military techs developed either. So he's not really prepared for he's not prepared for any tactic except for hussars. And if I reveal hussars, he can just build a bunch of knights in the meantime, then wait for cannons. Um, even though he has a lot of science, I just wanted him to have to spend the actions and the science in order to copy a good tactic. So yeah, I decided that my strength will probably come from the fact that I have better tactics. Maybe or maybe not. I get Air Force or not. I probably won't because I don't really have the military actions. I would probably need like communism or fundamentalism as well. I'll probably try to revolt into that and try and use H3 tactics that come up, since those are plenty strong in itself. So I go for the rifleman with the thought that I'm going to just go for Napoleonic army. It is a big science cost because I'll have to spend like 18 science total as opposed to 6. And then I'd probably want tanks later, so 6 plus 9 or something. But yeah, I just didn't want Goldan to have a really easy way of using a tactic, essentially. We go over the 2 riflemen, plenty strong. take the reserves, take the wave, take the opera. You know, there's Chaplin and Marlene, so yeah. I decided to not pick up the breakthrough. I still have some science left over, and I still get extra from Maria, so it's not the worst. Oh, and then I wanted to use my Silk Road, so I decided to build uh, organized religion here. Plus, I know that there's a civil unrest in this deck. Flips Inhabited, Skywalker wins this. I can't really afford to bid for it because I don't have any cards to defend. I'm perfectly fine with Skywalker winning this stuff. My general thought is that that Goldan is the bigger threat in this game since he has a lot of culture production. His resource and food production isn't the best, but his science is also really, really good as well. So he can definitely develop a lot of different things to get out of any holes that he might be in. Grabs strategy, grabs rifleman strategy, starts upgrading to get out of corruption, basically. That's why he went for rifleman instead of strategy. Skywalker Seeds, flips terrorism, which definitely kind of sucks. I would have definitely preferred him to destroy philosophy over theology, but at the very least, the terrorism flips so that this journalism is destroyed, which I'll take that as a win, anyways. Skywalker takes Republic, finally gets out of his despotism, finishes Eiffel Tower, builds a swordsman back, increases pop, and takes breakthrough. Oh, and the architecture. I see international negotiations. It's kind of interesting, but I know for a fact that I'm going to start getting stronger. The fact that international agreement flips for Skywalker is a little unfortunate, but at least it's not Goldan. Play the patriotism. I could have played the wave here, but I wanted to be able to draw some H3 cards. The patriotism gives me 2 military actions, and I build the cannon instead of the cavalrymen because I already have the riflemen anyways. I'm going to want most tactics involve cannons, so I start with the cannons first. And unfortunately, this draw kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Goldan takes fundamentalism, takes warrior, build the theater back since it was an unhappy population, and takes reserves. Yeah. Skywalker takes Chaplain, which I thought was surprising, and a bunch of other engineering genius urban growths, and then takes fast food chains. I was very surprised that he went for Chaplain here. This seems like just a pure denial for me, since I can go into operas and beef up my culture production. So yeah, I wasn't really sure why this was here, but that's what he does. I do feel like there are better leaders for him since he has, you know, since he is Nobel, but he even has alchemies could eventually go into computers for Meyer or something. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm more surprised that he didn't use his politics of strength to take a wonder instead. But like he could have taken a wonder and taken engineering genius. But I guess fast food chains did fall 3. I just generally find that spaceflight is a little bit better than fast food chains, even if you're only on like 6 science. So he doesn't have like the greatest population either. He hasn't had food, he hasn't had food production for the whole game. So fast food chains is it's a questionable pickup for me. I think I would have taken the spaceflight and the engineering genius that he has in here. But definitely very questionable to take Chaplin in my opinion. But he does take it, and I'm just not sure I see the logic behind it too much. He's just hoping to get movies or something, but they're so difficult to get into, so yeah. Anyways, finishes his turn by going for selective breeding, going for a cannon, and just uses engineering genius right away, because there's not much else to do with his turn. Actually, even if I look at this, even Marie could have been better than him, better than Nobel. Could have gotten the same science, just basically just a strict upgrade to Nobel because it would be +2 culture. So that would have been totally fine too, as opposed to chapel. I guess it wouldn't be a strict upgrade since you lose one strength, but still. So in my position, already shows that I take Manhattan here. I do have a lot of resources, not a lot of places to spend them besides units and stuff and strength. I'm really trying to pressure the fact that Goldan doesn't have a tactic. He doesn't have the best military techs developed, i.e., he doesn't have cannons, so he doesn't have a lot of population. So I'm really trying to stretch his ability to get more culture and stuff by getting some strength. And although I don't get a lot of benefit from this, I think that it's a pretty good idea to threaten some strength here. I could have, in theory, also gone for Opera and Marlene here, but I just felt like that would not give me enough in the sense that, like, I would only just be matching culture production. Have a lot less science to work with once I develop the Opera, and I still, in theory, need to develop these cavalrymen in order to get them out, you know? So I take the reserves and then go for cavalrymen here. It is a little tough to pass up on these revolutionary ideas, but like I said, I wasn't really planning on picking up Air Force or anything anyways. If they were on two civil actions, I probably would take it. But yeah, I decided to do it this way. And I do use the wave. I'm not exactly sure why. I kind of thought they weren't going to get stronger than me in general at this point, since it seems like it's a little bit on the difficult side when I'm up to, when I'm up to 17, and I kind of figured that they would stay a little bit weaker than me. So I use the wave using Silk Road here. And even if they do get stronger than me, if one person does, I'll still get 3 resources from Maria. So it's hard for me to see how the wave becomes very effective in future turns. So I decided just to use the civil action. Can't really go for the satellites or Maria anyway, so yep. Then I draw a variety and impact technology. Both of these not very good for me. Only if I were like in a more science-heavy route would these be better. So Goldan offers gets military protection, extra 4 strength. Goes for Marlene, reveals Conquistadors, and goes for Fundamentalism this turn. I was very surprised that he went for Fundamentalism this turn, actually. It seemed pretty unnecessary. He had Monarchy. I thought that one of his strengths was having a good amount of science production, but going back down to 5 really hurts at this point in the game. And this only gives him 6 strength, so he would have still been at 17. It's not like he needed to defend it. He has the promised military protection also, so it seemed very strange to me. Alright, Skywalker cedes, flips civil unrest, takes the Air Force revolutionary idea, so I don't get any, which I kind of accepted anyways, and then actually has defensive army, so he ends up stronger than me as well. So unfortunately, I used that wave already. Could have used it this turn, but I'm not really missing out too much anyways, because the Maria bonus covers most of this cavalryman, so it's not a huge deal. Finish Manhattan, and then go for cavalryman. And basically, I want to use this armed intervention against Goldan next turn. I think it's still very difficult for him to get stronger enough for it to matter, especially since I have a 23 difference right now. His tactic is pretty bad, so yeah, the only way he can really get stronger is either disband or use these reserves for food in order to build 2 more knights, and then use a strategy as well. So I just thought that I would invest a lot of his population into military if he wants to even think about defending, and I'd still probably try and go for the aggression anyway. Then I take the endowment of arts, which is pretty good. Then I take this military theory because I do kind of think that I'll need it. I can use it next turn too, especially if I draw a war, things are kind of on. Unfortunately, this is the 3rd defense card I've drawn, so Haven't had the best draws, but I also haven't drawn too much, so kind of, yeah, kind of just in that position. I mean, even in general, I'm not too far behind in culture. I get one aggression off, it'll be basically equal. So I'm still feeling pretty fine here. I'm not feeling too pressured that I need to war or anything, but it is. I just really want to leave it on the table. I really want to stretch Goldan's population. So Wong goes for tanks, and then only builds one knight, taking movies as well. So didn't really do too much with his turn in terms of getting stronger. So yeah, I think he's just trying to pray for defense cards. Do you think that there's no reason to go for movies as Marlene? You kind of just want operas since your bonus is very specific, which is your best. Each of your best theaters produces one extra culture and happy face. So as soon as you upgrade one movies, the other dramas don't do as much. Don't do anything. So better to have more dramas. Don't go for movies. If he wants extra culture, go for libraries, basically. But I'm kind of putting him in a position where he shouldn't be able to think about affording to go for movies. So he definitely could have spent his turn a little differently, I think. Yeah, like especially like maybe developing strategy or something. All right, Skywalker, sort of idea, goes for his Air Force, builds one, so he's pretty well defended. Even builds another cannon, goes up to 35. So he's basically saying he has one H2 defense card, one H3 defense card. Wouldn't go for him anyways. His culture's pretty low. I do play the armed aggression, and it does hit through. And then here I'm kind of in a crossroads. I have the impact attack and the variety. It might be a good idea to go for Einstein and computers here. And I really wasn't exactly sure what to do, to be honest, in this position. My variety is actually not bad since my units are spread out like this. So I could also go for operas too and just go for culture production. But yeah, since I couldn't go for computers this turn, sorry, I could go for computers this turn, but then I would take starvation. And I honestly really thought about that as well, actually. I thought about taking Einstein computers, upgrading, taking the starvation, and taking one of these yellow cards. Probably the patriotism, because I can still threaten a war that way. Um, if I uh, have the extra military actions, it's pretty useful with Silk Road, that kind of thing. And, the computers would also be really good with my impact of technology. So I did think about it quite a bit. I wasn't really sure what I would do exactly. And definitely debated on this turn a lot. The problem is that I just don't have enough resources right now. So, and there's also Churchill left. So, if like something like Churchill and Air Force came out for me to take and I had the patriotism, I could go for a war that way with some amount of resources. I could definitely build two Air Forces because what I do is I end up building a farm here, so I'm not in starvation. And that kind of made me think that the Einstein computers thing was a little bit on the slow side. I don't have any H3 text developed right now. Goldan already has one. He has more science than I do. So I felt like this whole impact of tech thing wasn't going to work out too well. Yeah, so what I do is I build the farm. I take military theory so I can draw more cards. And that was the big swing, is that I wanted to draw 3 cards basically. And then after that, I take the patriotism and the reserves. And with the patriotism, I can still declare war, build another army, or if I draw an H3 tactic, I can build an army and switch the tactic. So I thought that this would be pretty reasonable. Still threatening quite a bit. I did see international negotiations here as well, somewhere in the deck. So that could provide me a little bit extra something if I need it, but it's not guaranteed or anything. Yeah, I kind of lean into the strength play a little bit more. If I get an aggression, if I get a war, I think I'll pretty much play it against Goldan for the most part. Yeah. And then, unfortunately, I just draw Impact of Science and Impact of Happiness, which makes me really, really regret not going for the Einstein play, since it would have been a much easier path if I started just going for tech and science. So yeah. And then Goldan picks up Military Buildup. It was the first card here. Takes it, plays it right away. So now he actually has a reasonable defense here. He used a lot of resources, and getting that extra 10 was like such a big deal. He's very, very well defended now at this point. He also has enough science to go for Air Force, which is notable. So if I were to war him in some way, then I would need to deny Air Force in order to make that reason. Alright, Goldan Seeds, flips Ravage of Time. Scrambles his pyramids, goes for a chaplain, picks up movies, and then finishes his another army, so he's a little bit afraid there. Probably didn't have enough defense cards. Then he takes 2 extra cards, and then this actually puts me in a huge bind. There's only 3 cards before this turn, and you can see that I seeded there. But I had a consideration, which was I could try to let the game go on a little bit longer if I don't take any cards that aren't Mech Ag or Hollywood. And neither of those are actually very good for me, so obviously a little difficult here. And then, okay, first off, I see the Impact of Happiness. And that was, I want to say that that's actually a mistake. I see the Impact of Happiness because I know eventually that I'm going to build temples and stuff, and it seems pretty safe. And I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do next turn. But the fact is that Variety is actually 4 points better for me than Goldan, but it's 6 points worse than me for Skywalker. So I hesitated a little bit, thinking that Skywalker is going to have enough for fast food chains, start to catch up a little bit. He has enough to like start catching up a little bit. But the fact is that I actually have enough of a gap that I shouldn't really worry about Skywalker too much. This fast food chains isn't worth too much. It's like in the mid to low 20s right now. It's still pretty low compared. He's still pretty low. Like if he had a full extra 25 points, he would still be below me and Goldan. And I seed too cautiously here by seeding Impact of Happiness. I even know that like Goldan can easily go for 2 more dramas, and if I see the Variety, there's a pretty good chance that he'll even disband a lab for it or something in order to keep his harmony going as well. So I wanted to say that Happiness seed was really bad. I could have seen the Variety been a lot safer in that regard against Goldan, or a lot more reasonable against that regard against Goldan. But I will say that in actuality, so that's basically what I should have. I should have seeded Variety here. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do completely, but I will say at the end of this turn why I should have actually seeded Impact of Science. And although this international negotiation flips, and I pick up extra science from Goldan, my initial thought was I was actually going to go for Revolutionary Idea and Multimedia, while also keeping this Silk Road. So that would bring me up to 6 science production. I knowing that Goldan has to also crumble Library, he'd go down to 4. And then I kind of thought that he would probably disband this philosophy for a drama, and that Skywalker's 4 would be above Goldan's 3. That was kind of what my thought was. So because of that, my ideal line was actually to go for Multimedia and Revolutionary Idea, and then go for those next turn. I should have actually just straight up played Impact of Science. Because I wasn't planning on going for the war, I needed to deny this Air Force to make it worthwhile to go for the war, because they don't have a tactic to go for or anything. So I really wish Skywalker didn't put me in a position where I needed to not. I couldn't take Air Force because honestly, in this position in the game, there's essentially no reason I would ever go for him. He's lower than me in culture. He is strong, has more strength potential than Goldan as well. Goldan really doesn't have a lot of resources available. He has 15 plus 6 production, and then there's no extra resources in the deck. So I wouldn't even have to worry about that as well. It would just be this 21 resources. Basically, can build one more army, and that's 15, 13 more strength, basically. Sorry, yeah, 15 more strength, 2 tanks with a tactic, and 18 total with the rifleman. So his total strength in 2 turns is um, still only 59, and then maybe military theory 64. But if I had the ability to go for Air Force with, Churchill, since I would have enough, I could just go up to 74 here with a war if I somehow drew it. I have the patriotism still too, so I definitely could have done a war pretty much at any difference. Yeah. So, but since that wasn't an option for me, I decided to go into Impact of Science here, and then because this was the actual flip with international negotiations, I decided that instead of going for the multimedia, I'm actually just going to go for computers and the Nobel Prize. Well, first I build a temple, lay my endowment of the arts, lay reserves, and then go for my Nobel Prize here. The reason I don't mind kind of wasting some of those turns is because I feel like I'm going to need a lot of my actions next turn to, if 3 of them might just be like, if 3 or 4 of them might be just to take and play Churchill, and then 3 more actions doing this, then that's pretty much my entire civil action bank already. So I wanted to be a little bit more flexible in what I had to do. I also kind of figured that I had to build 1 more farm at some point as well. So I kind of thought my actions were 2 to take Churchill, 3 to play 4, 5, 6 to play these cards, and then 7, 8 would be to disband something and then build a farm. Yeah, so this actually makes the impact of happiness really bad too, since I don't have the ability to go for it. Yeah. Actually, some of my actions actually also need to be upgrade my computers as well. So I really shouldn't have gone for that impact of happiness now that I'm really thinking about it, but I do, and yeah, that's just what it is. I don't know what I was thinking at that time. It felt like it was like, oh, I don't know what I was going to do, and then I hedge in a really weird way, and it just doesn't seem like the correct play in a lot of this anymore. So anyways, I do draw a war. I draw 2 wars now, a little late, and I draw another good impact for me, which would have been Impact of Harmony. Well, maybe not good, but it's perfectly acceptable impact, and I have an extra population coming from Ocean Liner, so Impact of Happiness, probably one of the worst things I could have done at this point, but I did it, and yep. All right. I also forgot about the promised military production, so Goldan's even weaker than I thought he was going to be. And then flips Inhabited. I actually try to win this because it really makes it easier to not have to deal with my starvation. So very happy to win this one. But it does mean that Impact of Harmony could have been really, really, really good now. And if I'd seeded something else besides happiness, if I had science in already, then I would have more flexibility in what other impact that I would seed. So Goldan does disband a couple things, rebuilds the rifleman into a tank, and then increases pop, going for 1 more theater. So he actually disbands a mine instead of a lab, keeping variety but losing out to harmony, which makes me very sad because he didn't play around in the respect that I would normally think about, and then he also increased pop to not be affected by agriculture. So I should have. So either he has it or something. But I look at Skywalker Civilization. This was the first impact that Goldan put in, so he can't play around too much. Skywalker has 2 impacts in already. I look at his civilization. He looks pretty balanced. Looks like, it looked like before he could have agriculture or industry or something. So I feel like this play that Goldan doesn't play around what impacts it looks like that Skywalker has essentially at the moment. So yeah, but he does build the 2 dramas, makes it so that he plays around happiness as much as possible, gets as much culture production as possible. So he really punished me for the fact that I didn't really play the right impact. And arms industry comes up. Pretty nice for me to get a little extra resources here. Skywalker can actually go for movies. He disbands a coal, so that makes me think a lot less for industry, especially since he disbands another coal. Then he builds an arena. So this makes me feel pretty bad about what I was thinking about Skywalker's impacts that he could be playing. And I can't really do much about it at this point, I guess. Building this arena, it didn't matter for his happiness or anything, so things that I should really look out for with this is impact of architecture and impact of competition. I'm still kind of thinking that he has impact of industry, or sorry, impact of agriculture, but yeah. So coming to this turn, on my last turn, I still have impact of science to proceed in. I still have my own production to go through. I still get a Nobel Prize, so I'm still very, very, very within the range of this game. Or basically, I feel like I'm really poised to lead this game. I should have better impacts across the board against Goldan. If I look at what's available, I'd be better in progress if Skywalker seeded it. I'd be better in wonders if Skywalker seeded it. Sorry. All right, I'm gonna look at all of the impacts that are actually available. I know that I seeded happiness, that I have technology, science, variety, and harmony in the deck. I am better than Goldan in balance, strength. We're equal in architecture. I'm better in government. I am better in colonies. I'm better in population. I'm better in wonders. I'm better in progress. I'm worse in competition, better in agriculture if I build 1 farm, and better in industry. So if I had done a table like what Payada does, I would have discovered that because I'm better in. I get a little bit too confident here because I know that it's very unlikely for Goldan to have gotten the impact of culture in the last turn. This was the first turn that he seeded impact. So I get a little confident, and I don't recognize that I'm still worse. I'm equal to him in impact of agriculture, and equal to him in impact of architecture, and I'm actually slightly worse. So if the 2 remaining impacts currently are culture plus competition plus one of the other 2 that I'm equal in, I should have realized that I would come up a little bit short. And honestly, spoilers, I'm just going to say it right now, is that I do come up a little bit short in this situation. So, but because because I should have played around these 3 specific impacts, because I'm currently equal to Goldan in agriculture and architecture. I don't really need to play too much around it, but since I'm behind in competition, it's something that I should play around more. I know that the happiness is mine in the deck, and there's actually 3 impacts from Skywalker. So there's quite a few things that could benefit me over Goldan. So I'm kind of hoping that basically these 3 are not exactly agriculture, competition, and architecture. But right now I'm exactly equal to, or not exactly equal, I'm 1 point behind in agriculture, which isn't game breaking or anything. And then I do go for this. I do see my Impact of Science. Impact of Colonies comes up. So I catch up quite a little here. Get Churchill. Go for my Nobel Prize. Build my temple. Upgrade here. Build here to play around strength or competition or something. And then with my last civil action here, I build a farm. I build the farm, even though I'm relatively equal in Goldan um, against against agriculture, and relatively equal against him in competition. So yeah, basically if I don't build this farm, I'm behind in 1 point in agriculture, equal in architecture, and behind 2 points in competition. And I definitely could have mathed this out, but I did not. And if I had gone for the competition here, well, basically I'm just playing either around architecture or competition for Skywalker. And I did not consider the team sports play to be a lot more on the competition side as opposed to agriculture. Um, there were chances that he could have disbanded and built more farms instead. But I was kind of thinking that maybe it was more on the architecture side. He has the movies. He has like his architecture is 9, which is both better than me and Goldan. Since this is 6 and I have 6, so I figured this was more on the architecture side. Can't really do much about it at this point. So yeah, I decided to go on the agriculture. I do end up paying for this. So you can see that I have a pretty significant lead going into this. I also know that Impact of Science is in here. So I have another 7 points over Goldan. Competition comes up, so do lose out a bit. Architecture comes out, lose out a bit. And then culture comes out, which I thought was really unfortunate. And then science, I come up 2 points short. And I'm mostly just talking about this because I feel like I did not judge this position well enough 2 turns ago. I could have seeded a little bit better. I could have seeded in a different order in order for me to capitalize on variety or harmony a little bit better. And yeah, I do pay for this. I just didn't consider, Goldan having the one chance to draw Impact Culture very hard. I thought that I was better in almost every other impact. Like I said, the only other impact we were equal in was architecture, and Skywalker looked balanced. He looked like he had progress. He had population or wonders or pretty much any of the other things would have filled in my direction a little bit better. But I didn't consider the worst case scenarios enough, and I got paid. Basically what happened is I paid for it. So yeah, sometimes you need to put in that a little extra effort to get that little extra edge, and I came up a little short. Yeah, so anyways, I do think in general this game was pretty well played by Goldan. He he played in a way which made me feel like I had to chase him, and it made me do some questionable plays along the way. I could have taken Einstein at some point, um, made this whole thing a little bit better for me, since I could have used him to develop 3 techs and get 9 culture, as opposed to Churchill. He only gave me 3. Even if I only use him for 6, 6 points, it'd still be a little bit better. And because I really leaned too much into the war, I never actually used patriotism or anything, so it's kind of a waste of 3 civil actions. And I really wanted to keep threatening this war, and since it didn't come up and I was leaning too much into a card that I didn't have, I paid for it. So yeah, that's basically what it came down to. Because Goldan made me chase him a little bit, and I didn't actually have aggressions, I didn't have wars in hand, I overly committed to a plan that I didn't have an actual solid backup for. I really had this idea of playing for different impacts and stuff, at some point, but as the game went on, I went a little bit more war heavy, and I did not draw them until it was too late. And yeah, it is what it is. So at the end of this game, I mean, since the end of this game has happened, two more games also finished. So you can see that my result was here. Goldan finishing, and I have Skywalker, and then two more games finished. So the total standings here are: I'm in the lead, tied with Goldan, but one game behind at 17 points. Skywalker has 13, Kimo has 7, and Clocklaw 92 has 2. So Clocklaw 92 is for sure out. He's for sure being relegated, and Goldan is for sure or Goldan and I are for sure, advanced well, we're not. Sorry, one of us is advancing and one of us is staying. Skywalker and Kimo can still have a close result since Kimo is actually 2 games behind and Skywalker is finished. So Skywalker is currently beating Kimo in tiebreaks since he has beaten Kimo twice and Kimo has beaten Skywalker. So the only way that Kimo can advance is if he wins the next 2 games. Or sorry, if he can stay in gold if he wins the next 2 games. Anyways, hope you enjoyed watching this episode, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.